But I normally really appreciate it when people choose the French one with a negative stiff neck.
I prefer stiff neck, but space is very nice.
Always compromises.
My coffee is my toast.
Oh, right. Yes. Okay.
While everyone is settling down, I'll just have a few words of welcome for the second day. Well, in fact, I'm here to apologize for some bits and pieces of the program. So, very symptomatically, one area in the program is due to automatic reasoning, and the other is due to human errors. So, and I'll tell you which one is which. So we actually have 2 errors in the last session, 2 last talks.
Sure.
So the document is lost. The title is wrong, but on the internet you have it all right. So that was a human error.
I would have been so
frustrated
if you had
we
been here
noticed
before
only
me
too
now.
late
No,
that not all the pictures there are showing. And that was after the easy chairs error, because we checked all the files, they were fine.
Easy chair never makes sense.
So an easy chair just then, well, we generated those from PDFs, we checked all the PDFs and thought, well, what easy chair does essentially just put them all together and put page numbers, and suddenly one paper out of all pictures disappeared. So you noticed in your proceedings that we printed that paper, and that was normal PDF without easy chair.
But the real one is the online one these days, isn't it?
Yeah, so 2 errors and very symptomatically. So we both, your audience, automatic reasoning and natural reasoning all make mistakes. Right?
Okay, right, I can start? Okay, thank you very much. Just to give you a warning, so we will have a discussion session after that, and I would really like you to participate then in that. So to think while I talk, does this relate in some way to my work? Is there anything that I can contribute? And it would be great if you could do that. Okay, so I want to present you today something that is called ForMaRE, Formal Mathematical Reasoning in Economics, and that is joint work we are doing in Birmingham. Myself, Manfred Kerber, and Christoph Lange, his research fellow on this EPSSC funded project, and Colin Ward is my co-investigator from this economics department in our university. And Ursula asked me yesterday, how did I get in touch with him in the first place? And it was somewhere, you could say, it was a shot in the dark that Colin did some 3 or 4 years back. That he sent an email to someone in our school whom he knew, whether he could broadcast that to everyone on our research list. And he had a particular problem and had done a kind of research online and thought then that quantifier elimination could help in some way to his research. Turned out that in the end it couldn't, but still. So I replied to that email then, and we got in touch, we met, and in a way it is a very painful start in a way, so even for people who are really willing to cooperate and to come together, since when you are in a different community, you use the same words, but they mean something completely different. So when they speak about agent, and we will speak about agent soon, an agent is just a natural number, in a way, when you look into the theory. Yeah? In the practice, it can be a human being, but when you look into the theory, it's just a natural number, in a way. When we speak about an agent, we mean some, whatever, thing that is proactive, does certain things, or so has intentions or whatever. So there are different ways how to speak about that, and you have to come to a way of finding a common language. You have to understand what they mean there. And we did that, and then, after, how to say, these initial hurdles, it proved very productive. So I would say this was one of the best emails I ever sent in my life in this answer to Colin's request. And I will partly present that, we'll partly present things about things that we did then together, but also things that we want to do. By the way, when you have a question, interrupt me at any time. During that joint work, so I realized firstly, what they do has a lot to do with mathematics. So it is not what I originally thought. Their view of computer science is now to see that we have certain models that we run, that we whatever have artificial kind of things that run on a computer that try to model the real economy. But it has, to a large degree, at least there's a big subpart of the whole area of economics, theoretical economics, with the improved mathematical theorem. So that is in the style of von Neumann-Morgenstern, the same von Neumann with the von Neumann architecture and from computer science. He worked in the 1944 or so 45 that they published this game theory book, and that is still a big foundation for theoretical foundations of economics, to look at economic transactions as games between different players. And they prove things there, and very often these proofs are at a level where you say this is undergraduate maths level. So it is not something that is extremely sophisticated. Whatever we heard yesterday about the Hell's proof of the Kepler conjecture, or very much research kind of mathematics at the top, also where you have very intrinsic kind of things going on. It is very much undergraduate level. So in that sense, it should be how to say approachable by our methods that we deliver. Proofs in economics are error prone, just as in any other theoretical fields, and so there are certain proofs that come out occasionally, certain conjectures obviously which are false, and certain things that are assumed and are implicitly used. So for instance in von Neumann-Morgenstern, they used a certain solution concept where we look at briefly in a minute. It's called the stable set. So you can say when you have an equation, you want to look for the solution, or you want to look for zeros. There you have a more complicated game, and also you look for a solution set that solves these kind of things. And they assumed it always existed. So implicitly we said, and then we take the solution and do that and that. They did not, how to say, state explicitly only if it exists. And some 20 years later, someone came up with a game that has no solution. So, and now, even more recently, in the 2000, Baskin, a Nobel Prize winner, he made a proof, whatever, he made it very detailed for n equals 3, and then said, by easy argument, you can see that it extends to n greater than 3, and 2 or 3 years later, someone came up with a counterexample saying it's 4. So you can get these things wrong, and we will also see when you can get them wrong, can be, I mean, it's theoretical, it is in a way, you have to take all these things with a grain of salt. When it is practical and you implement certain things and you get them wrong, it can be quite expensive. So that we assumed, yeah, formalization should be achievable. It should not just be computer scientists who do that, but it should be possible that also economists learn them and then use them like they use LaTeX and other kinds of systems. Now, with that is a bit more debatable, and I want to discuss that then at the end. The question is also whether that is actually something that we should try to achieve on the short term. Yeah. But we want to understand how we can use, from a computer science point of view, to say, when we apply our system there, what are actually the problems? So where are the hurdles that they would say, oh, we can't use that here, since it is a bit too difficult to deal with that. Briefly, I want to go through some work where we started with, that is a niche area in game theory. It's called village games, has been developed by recently, in a sense, some 7-8 years back. Then something that is, how to say, commercially very important is auction theory. The next thing is matching problems. Matching, not in the sense as one-sided unification, but in the sense of you have whatever kidney donors and kidney receivers, and you want to do matches in this area. Another one is financial risk. That has, of course, to do with the banking crisis and all that, and the big money may be involved. And I want also to present some other work. Actually, I did that first. So when we started, we thought, well, right, maybe we are the first to do work in this area there, but you are never the first in a way. So there is work that has been going on, and it has been going on mainly in the last decade, where people looked into, and there was one big, let's say, chunk of work. There was also other work but let's just talk about the one there, and it's errors and possibility theorem. That's one of the, how to say, classical results in economics, that when you make some very reasonable assumptions in a way, then already it doesn't work anymore. And the reasonable assumptions here are the kind that you have individual choices, yeah, whatever. We have a pot of money and we can now decide whether we build a new school or a new road, and other kind of things that we can do with it. And now you have personal choices with that. I say, my child comes to school soon, I want to have the school, or I have to drive a lot, so I want that street. So we have a lot of individual choices, and now we want to come up with a societal choice. That we now say, as a society, we decide now we do choice A or choice B. And you want to have, like everyone says, A, we prefer A over B, then also society should prefer A over B. Yeah, that makes sense that you want to have that. And then also when you have two choices A and B, but the A comes before B, should depend only on the choices between A and B on the individual level, and not what they do with C, D, and E, and so on. And then also you would not want to have a dictator as this property D, let's say you have one there who can dictate all the choices. So their choice will determine what society does. So if this agent changes their choice, then society will change their choice. That you wouldn't want to have. And then you look these three axioms together, and then they're inconsistent. To say when you have the first two, then you have a dictator, necessarily. And that was then this impossibility theorem. And that was then taken up by Giannakopoulos in 2005, and he gave 3 different proofs for that. And then people came and they looked at how can we do these things. Oops, this one came from there, sorry for that. There came the different proofs, they came up there and did these things in different systems. And proved then that, in particular, Nico, Tang, and Lin, guys and Endless made proofs of this particular theorem, and there's a lot of kind of work that was then published around 2007, 2009. And partly, so there were also kind of communications with Giannakopoulos on that he had some of these proofs wrong, so that and that he corrected them then later in this 2005 paper on that. There's also other work which have also to do with reasoning about games, or also other kind of theorems on rationality. I don't want to go into that much, since I want to also speak on other things and on challenges in that. And it's, in some sense, when you look at that, it was then that computer scientists were looking for a new area to apply that, and sometimes you can say it's the same thing that I did as well. So to see then, after a while of collaboration, to see we should be able to apply that. But I was in a very fortunate position with Colin that to have a partner with whom I could discuss then these kind of things. And what we are looking first were so-called village games. Just to give you a flavor that how mathematical these things are. So this is what is called a so-called power function. The power function is something, you have money, and the more money you have, the more powerful you are. And we can form coalitions, a certain coalition, let's say here the front row, and if we have more power than you there in the back, we can take all your money. Yeah, that is sort of the idea of a village game. And a simple example of that would be, for instance, parliamentary democracy. You have elections, and the majority, it's not money now, but when the majority cannot change the tax rules, and the rest has to obey. Yeah, we cannot do anything about that, since otherwise the bailiff comes and will collect the money anyway. So we see already any power struggle is pointless, so you, and for that, costless. Yeah, when someone comes with a gun and wants your money, you give them money. There's no point to dispute that in a way. And so that it is costless. And it has to follow 3 monotonicity axioms. Firstly, weak coalition monotonicity. When you take someone else to your coalition, whether they bring money or not, your power will not decrease by that. When you, everyone in your coalition has weekly more money, then the power of your coalition weakly increases. And when everyone has strictly more money, then the power of your coalition strictly increases. And now with all these kind of things, and just to say, and what we did then was actually some 2.5 years back or so, there was at the IKICAM in Paris, there was a workshop where I presented then that which system to use best there. And just to say briefly, that was on the one that Piotr Rudnitsky, who sadly died last year, then said, it does not matter which system which you use, yeah? We are welcome to use Visa for that, but you just have to do it. And then was also there Wolfgang Wittsteiger, who said, why don't you come to Linz, and we do it in Theorema. And that's what we did at these parties. So we proved some of the theorems then in Theorema. I will speak a bit about that. So that is the mathematical formulation, and below you see that very close to that, in a way, the Theorema. Theorema is a mathematical extension, so you use the mathematical language for that. So that is, in some sense, very nice. That you could say, since also economists are to a large degree using Mathematica, so a certain set of economists use mathematics, so you can then get them very easily into using a system like Theorem. Just give you a view on how these peerage games can be displayed. There are 3 agents here, so in each of the corner you imagine you have agent 1, 2, and 3, and that point there in the left lower corner there, this one here, would mean agent 1 has all the resources in the world, and 2 and 3 have nothing. And you would represent that by triple 1, 0, 0, and likewise here 0, 1, 0, and 0, 0, 1. And in between are all the other distributions that can exist. Now you have here a very simple power function, but then you can speak in general. Power function is any mathematical function which satisfies the 3 axioms which I showed before. And this is one example of it. You just add up all the resources of a coalition, and that tells you then your power. And when you look at that, that means that here in this area, agent 1 is more powerful than 2 and 3 together. So agent 1 can pillage everything, and so this is in some sense an attractor. Yeah? So wherever you are here in between, and these agents are in that sense not nice, when they can pillage, they do pillage. So whenever you are in this region here, excluding the borderline here, you end up in this point here. And likewise, when you are in this region, you end up here. Likewise, when you are in this region, you end up there. So what happens when you're here in the middle? It's not so clear. It depends now which 2 agents would come first, in a way, with their pillar, which ones form first a coalition. And that is not part that what you look at now. There's not, these agents are not in that sense intelligent. They say we have to be fast and all that. You just look what may happen. Whatever happens, you will end up either here, that agents 1 and 2 say together, oh come, let's pillage whatever 3 has, and we share that so that we have half-half. And then nothing can happen anymore. Yeah? So agent 3 is no player anymore, has no power, no influence. And 1 and 2 are equally powerful. They can't do anything anymore to each other. So that is then also an attractor, likewise here and here. And the same happens when you're at this borderline. You would also end up there, except when you're in the middle. So when you have half, a quarter, then you're also in a situation. So when you look at these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 points, they form something which has been then made formal, called a stable set. Stable set is a set which the points do not dominate each other, so you can't pillage each other. So these 9 points form a stable set. You can't pillage each other, but you can pillage any other. So they dominate any other point in that set. So whenever you start with any distribution, you will end up in one of these 9 points. So that is sort of the general game that you play there to find this stable set, and this is a quite intractable problem in general. But for this particular problem with the additional constraint that you have continuity in the functions, so Colin and I came then up with an algorithm that we say up to 15 points we can have, and that is the most that you can get there. And that was sort of what we tried to formalize then in theorema. We came up there with a pseudo algorithm in general. So the algorithm has certain assumptions where you need an oracle. That oracle you can formulate in form of a lemma, which then you can in turn prove in theorema. So it's not a proper algorithm, since you need an oracle there. You need at a place to know, is this agent there now equally powerful than that and that? Is this set empty or not, or something like that? And that you cannot, or at least we do not know how to decide that. Maybe there is a possibility to decide that in general, but in the concrete case, you would have to prove a theorem. And that is very nice about theorema, that you can, how to say, in one single system, you can do the two different kind of things at the same time. You can compute and prove, and you can merge that in a way. There are other problems with theorema, and theorema is a very small group. It is mainly Wolfgang Wittsteiger and one or two that helped him there to develop that. And he felt also that he has to make a restart on that, so he's currently developing theorema 2. That was then also a reason for us to say that we will not continue to use theorema 1 and rather move them to a different system, and that we went and also now do our groups now in Isabel at this moment in time, but we are looking for theorema still as one of our systems there. So we gave a presentation there last year in the summer at the Initiative for Computational Economics. That is one of the, or perhaps the most prestigious summer school in the area of computational economics. So these are people who see, yes, computers are very important. We want to have algorithms which compute certain things for us, typically make numerical computations, and we then have to see, whatever, when you invert matrices and these kind of things, yeah, you have to use certain kind of algorithms that it is stable, so it's not good enough just to know how it works mathematically, but you have to know about numerical mathematics quite a bit. And so that's what this community is interested in. And so they had a summer school where PhD students come, and they're very selective there. I think they choose 30 out of, I don't know how many hundred who apply, and they have then a project that they do there. We presented them that work, and then and that it was run by Ken Judd, and he gives advice to everyone. He said, no, this is really a niche area. When you want to have any significance in our area, you have to go for something else. You have to go for something which is more at the core, and that means also that that the things that I will present you shortly are much more important in that sense. So we had then a symposium. It's called an AISB. It's a workshop last week called Enabling Domain Expert to Use Formalized Reasoning. And at that we had 3 invited speakers, and we had been in touch that were contacts. That was also, it's very important that we have an economist on such a project here, that he would know whom to approach, to invite to such an event. And so that were for these 3 areas that I want to speak briefly about now. The first is about auctions. And there we had Peter Crampton. He's one of the famous auction designers. And we also did work then, and that is in some sense, there's a book by Paul Milgram and Maskin as another Nobel Prize winner. So Milgram is, Maskin is, and he wrote a review of that book, and in that book he summarized sort of the most important, was it 17 most important theorems on auctions, and starts off with the easiest and oldest result there, and that moves on there. And we started then also to look into these proofs in order to see how to prove them. So Peter Crampton is involved now in an auction that has to do with the ICANN domains, and he gave a quite exciting information on that. You may know that the top-level domains like .uk, .org, .graph, or whatever, these top-level domains will be extended. So there will shortly be domains like .house, .book, .trade, whatever. Yeah, so every one of us could have bid. Unfortunately, I forgot the exact amount. It was more than $100,000 that you have to put in with your bid. whether you get it or not, that money is lost. So that kept away quite a number of people. But obviously Amazon, Google, and these big companies, and also some consortia have made bids, also bids for things like the book. And how will it be decided? I can say best, now after that first round, now it's clear, for instance, there are six organizations which bid for .book. And so go away and get an idea who gets it among yourselves. So the idea Google pays whatever, 20 million to Amazon or so, or the other way around, and they pay, and for that they will say, okay, we withdraw our bid, so that they agree among themselves. So that is the idea.
Is that legal?
Yes. It looks like, yeah. But you touched there on a very important point. I come now in a minute with that. That's what I can say. Yeah, the antitrust kind of.
Well, I grew up in an agricultural community, and when you had cattle auctions, of course that sort of thing went on, but it was not supposed to happen.
Yeah.
Everybody knew it was not supposed to happen.
But didn't you say that they lose the money anyway? The money they put into the auction will be taken anyway? No. You have with your bid, you have to pay that you are in there. Oh,
so they wanted to restrict that. That is not part of the auction. That is just an entrance fee.
But that's quite high. Okay.
That's quite high to push you and me off, so that they don't get 1 million of submissions there. But it is just pocket money for the big trusts, whatever, like Google or Amazon. For them it's nothing. So they would obviously bid for these things. And also they have things like .ForMaRE, so certain big companies wanted to have their names. I could imagine that whatever British Airways, so they have their ones. But then these are then undisputed, and disputed are the ones where they will get it then in a sense. So ICANN will make some checks that they're not a mafia, so I assume there won't be some mafia in the end. But then they will then give to legal entities that will give these domain names for these companies. So I assume there will be a .google or something like that. But that it's not in the open at this moment in time. But the ones that are contended are in the open, and there it's not clear now who will get it. And they say that, and if they do not agree, then there will be an auction. That is the final resort auction, and who bids most will get it, and who bids second most will determine the price. The highest has to pay, and ICANN will keep the money. So they have an incentive to agree among themselves, and Peter Kerber in the way designs now an auction. So to do that beforehand, to do this auction, and then to distribute that money that comes in there, so that the bidders are at the same time also sellers. And there are interesting questions how that happens. And one of the interesting questions there is exactly the legal situation. So there are all sorts of legal things attached to that. Firstly, you have to make a legally binding kind of contract there to say, if I lose in that auction, I withdraw my bid from the ICANN. So that is legally binding. But then there's exactly the kind of question that arose now, which makes it complicated. Is that at all possible, or would that violate antitrust laws? And lawyers are still debating that at this moment in time. Otherwise, it would happen at the end of this month. This pre-auction organized by Yes.
What assures that some agreement will be met among the group?
Yeah, it would have to be a legally binding contract.
Yeah, but what assures Amazon says I'll withdraw for 500 million,
yes,
and Google says, well, I'm not going to pay you 500 million. And
they all
vice versa.
No, they all have to agree.
Yeah.
If one single.
But what's pushing them into a state where they do agree? Why don't they just come and say?
It pushes them into the state to say, if the ICANN makes the auction in the end, then the money is lost and ICANN will get the money. Yeah. So let's assume this auction gives 500 million, then ICANN will have the 500 million. If, however, we agree beforehand on an auction which runs as the same principle as ICANN does, then this 500 million will be distributed among us. So we have the then have, let's say we are 5 in that, so every one of us gets 100 million. So we are 100 million each better off than if we go for the icon. That is the incentive to do that. But you're right, there are all sorts of games there, and if one of them says, no, I do not play that game, I go with the icon auction, then it will be the icon auction. Then it must be how everyone agrees with that. But it's not clear whether that is Peter's problem at the moment in time. It's not clear whether it's legal or whether it would violate antitrust law. You may know that from eBay that follows something similar. This is called also second price auction. Firstly, it goes to the one who values the good most. Secondly, that's what you want from an auction. When you have these bids, you want to give it to the one who values it most. Particularly when you have what about the kind of radio, the frequencies, mobile phone frequencies, and all these things. You want that it is societal, how to say, values, not that people sit on it and don't do anything with it. That's at least some theoretical goal that is looked at there. You have a mechanism determining prices. If you do not know how much is it actually worth, you have a mechanism there that will determine it. And obviously, often you try to maximize the revenue that you want to get there. Peter Kerber and other, they design auctions, and some of the properties that they have, they try to prove. Now, some are possible to prove, others are much harder to prove. Now, there's the other big auction designers in this country from Oxford, that's Paul Klemperer. And he said that once, so designing these G3 auctions for mobile phones makes such a big difference when you design it well. And I've forgotten now, you can get per capita something either £400 or only £20. So in some countries, they did the same as they did in this country to auction it, and they got much more money out of that for the state and for the treasury when you design it well. But that would be, I guess, extremely hard to prove in a way what is a well-designed auction, which one is better than another. So there's still quite some magic in that, and so we'll say this is ill understood. But other parts are very well understood, and we can actually prove theorems about that. And this is this oldest theorem in the field, so 1961 by Hickory in a second price auction. Second price auction means everyone makes a bid, like in eBay or so. But eBay is more complicated since you can bid again and you can change your bid and all that. You assume you have a closed envelope, you put your bid in, and then they are all opened in a way, and you look, so is there the highest gets it. Yeah, whatever, it's my laptop there, and then everyone makes a bid or so, and you say, yes, I want to have it, but I can bid for it, whatever it is worth to me, since I will not pay what I have bid, but what is the highest bid except mine. Yeah, so when everyone bids below £200, and when you bid £1,000, you will pay the 200 if that's the highest bid, the second highest bid. And the theorem in a way says when you have a second price auction, you can bid your true value. You cannot do any better. And that's what it says here. This is a weakly dominant strategy. And also it is efficient. The one who values it most, or a one who values it most, will get it. Yeah, there could be several who value it most. And that's one of the earliest results. And that's also in a simple environment in which we can gain some intuition. And when you look at these things, it looks first quite complicated. That already this weakly dominant, they've supported equilibrium in weakly dominant strategies or so, and then you look at something like that, oh yeah, this looks really bad in a way, and then you formalize it then in something like Isabel, I'm just here to get a flavor. It looks also pretty bad. It looks even worse there. I don't want to go through that in detail, but that's that was then mainly Christoph the Lange who did that, to formalize it then in Isabel. And then when you go for Wiki's theorem, then it looks actually much better again. So when you have gone through some hardship, then so they shows equilibrium, weakly dominant strategy, and then you have the right arguments and participants and what they evaluate and what they bid and then you have a very nice way of formulating that again. By the way, there comes something out there that you see there in line 4, where it says something like the cardinality of n has to be greater than 1. So we have to speak of more than one agent. There are different ways how to do that. And when you look at Wiki's theorem, it doesn't say there must be at least 2 bidders. Yeah, this is something that you assume implicitly, and you wouldn't say so. You have different ways how you can do that. Either you say explicitly, we must have at least 2 bidders, or you do something like you could have either you have a reserve, that you have a certain minimal value, you must bid at least whatever a pound or 50p or something like that. You cannot just have 0 there. And, so there's a minimum amount there that will then go forward. But the proof doesn't look very nice either, so that's the question. So just to give you a snapshot of where we are now, so so Christoph mainly did that, and then he asked when he had finished the proof, Makarios Wenzel is one of the developers of MISA, to look through the proof to give hints there. When you use it as a naive user, then in a way you have certain idiosyncrasies in which you would better avoid, and to give their advice on that. So this is done. We started at the same time. Wolfgang Windsteiger came to see us last November, also in Theorema 2, which is a new development of Theorema, and so that is ongoing. Has also to do with that he's redeveloping the Theorema 2 system at this moment in time, so that holds it back. Then we are in touch with another collaborator, that's Marco Caminati from Rome, and he has a lot of experience in MISA, and has also visited the MISA group there, and we thought that this would be an interesting kind of problem. So he has then proved the theorem also in MISA, and we wanted at the same time also to develop kind of challenge problems for theorem improvers, so to look at the QPTP. And since Christoph has been previously working with Masakowski, who develops the Castle system, and they have a nice interface to the QPTP, so that it was the decision taken that we should use that system in order to formulate this theorem also in that. And that is what Christoph has done, and most of the proofs have been done at this moment in time, but it's not fully finished yet. To give some tentative, how to say, look what is there with these auction theory before I move on to the next field, to say often representation is not trivial, and it is easy to make mistakes there. So partly when you look at the kind of the theorems there, so goodness me, this is very, very complicated. I don't quite understand what's going on there, and Colin is very good at explaining these things to us to a level that we understand and appreciate that. And then you see suddenly, how do we represent this? How do we represent that? Is that correct or not? So this is the first step, which is a big hurdle when you are not a domain expert. Yeah, when you are, let's say, an automated reasoning person and you want to formulate these things, that you need some kind of understanding. Even if you have that, you can easily make mistakes. Yeah, you write it, one wrong bracket at a place, and the whole definition now, for instance, means something different, or the theory means something different, and you couldn't prove it. Or you can prove it, and you prove it way too. You said this book can't be right. This is all way too easy, or so. We haven't made use of many of these kind of different concepts, and then you would say, okay, yes, that is since one of our definitions was inconsistent, and then you use a kind of a proof by contradiction, then you make just use of this one definition, and you see that it must be something wrong. Yeah? So certain common sense reasoning, meta-reasoning, plays a very important role in order to see whether your description is consistent. But when you use it and reuse it again, then you see when things are wrong. Yeah, you notice that particularly when you do it on a different system. You notice it in assumptions like whatever the second price auction, you need at least 2. Otherwise, you cannot. The proof won't go through. Yeah, so that is one of the good things there. One of the things is to say, when you look at this particular theorem there, it looks quite complicated what is all involved with this weakly dominant strategy and equilibrium and all these things, and that's also something about randomization. So what do you do if you have 2 who bid equally much highest here? So what should happen now? And then it says here, make a random choice, and have randomized it. God, it gets very complicated now. Yeah. What does that mean to have that fair, that it's equal among all highest bidders? And how would you represent these things? By the way, there was Peter Crampton, he gave us a very good hint there last week. He said, forget about all this randomization, take an extra argument, yeah, take the randomization out of that. And that's what they do actually in their algorithm. They take the randomization out and to give whatever an order, a type rate among the agents in case they become equal. So then you have a way to test your algorithms. You can convince whatever your regulators that your algorithms are correct. They can test them, and that is a much better way to do that. And likewise, with other kinds of problems, it is often important to find the right level of representation there. And it was in this way to get it represented and then to do the reasoning on paper first, to understand, and then the reasoning is actually relatively simple. The reasoning is so simple that I can explain it to you in hopefully 30 seconds, that you say when you have to, if you are an agent and you bid what it is actually worth to you, yeah? You say this good is worth to me £500, I bid the £500. You cannot do better indiscriminately of what the others do. And that is very nice about this kind of auction. You don't have to worry about it. So if I bid more than 500, then it may happen I get it and I have to pay more, since someone else pays also then. Let's say I bid 502, someone else bids 501, I have to pay 501, then I pay more than it is worth to me. So that's no good. So I should certainly not go from a bid that is worth to one that is higher. When I go below, that I bid only 499, I may not get it anymore, but then I have lost £1 in a way, since it's worth to me let's say I bid for 498, someone else bids 499, the one who has bid 499 gets it, I don't get it, so I have lost out. If I had bid 499 as well, 500, then I would have got it for 499, so I have lost out £1 on it, so I get again a loss. So I cannot do better than the 500. That's sort of the idea of the proof. It's very simple, 4 cases in a way. Either I bid or I lose, and I bid more or I bid less. There are these 4 cases, and they are relatively simple, but still they can be hard for theorem provers to prove, and you have to cut it down further. And that's something that we have to quite understood. Why are things that are often very simple to us still so difficult to theorem provers? By the way, whether something is higher order or first order is not that important in a way. Or also whether you use a system that is fully automated or interactive is also not that important in a way. Since you will, it depends on what is the difficulty of the argument. When it is sort of an easy first order argument, then a higher order system like Isabel we use also kind of the first order reasoning there in it. And when you use a fully automated system, you will have to split it down anyway to a point that they can digest it. They are called fully automated, but then they have their limitations, obviously. And then when the problem is too complicated, you will have to break it down. You will have to introduce intermediate lemmas and so on, so that this is not that helpful in a way. We want to redo now the proofs constructively. That was what Peter Duncan said, that we can extract an algorithm from it. That is something he would be really interested in. Since some of big auctions have failed, since they have, for instance, overlooked the case. Suddenly something happens, and now they don't know what they should do. And I heard that we get one example that was one of these big frequency licenses for mobile phones or something in Germany, allegedly last year failed. They didn't know for days what they should do now. That's of course not good. We would want to have reassurance that you have covered all the cases that came. And then we want also to prove some more recent theory. Okay, matching problems. There are, and this is from Utku Ingvar. By the way, that is also very nice. There are people who were willing, and that was Peter Crampton and Utku Ingvar, they came over from the US for our event. So they took all the trouble on themselves to come from the other side of the Atlantic here to discuss these things with us. So there's a real interest there. That is very, very nice. So for instance, one problem is house allocation problem. You say I have social houses. So we would more think of university offices, So we move into a new building, and now the question is who gets which office. Yeah, everyone has certain choices in that. So the offices are there are enough offices for everyone, so it exactly fits, and how should we now allocate them? So I have certain choices. I want to have this office first, this second, this third. So I assume now that I have a complete total order. That's my first, my second, my third, my fifth, and fourth, fifth, and so on. And you have that as well, and you have that, and you have that. And how do we do that now? That's the problem. Likewise, when you have already houses and you want to trade in, you have an office and you say, actually, I would like that one, can we swap offices, that we can change that. That is a different problem. There's another one of to match living donors of kittens to receivers, students and schools, marriage matching. So there are all sorts of problems there. I just want to briefly discuss two of them. So this is the formalization in a way. So I have their agents, just these numbers there, I have houses, and each agent has a preference relation. So they're strictly graded, so we can't have equality here. So agent 1 may say, so I prefer house 3 strictly over house 4, strictly over house 1, and so on. Everyone makes a preference there. And we say that and the solution is that when we have this ordering there, we have the agents, and we now give for every agent we assign a house. So that will be then a solution. We say solution is Pareto efficient if there's no better way of doing it. So when I have a solution and I cannot find a solution which is for every agent at least as good as the given one, so nu is at least as good as mu, it will always be theta equal, but for some it will be actually better. And that is not possible then I say it's Pareto efficient. It is incentive compatible if it is the best for each agent to tell the truth. So I should not pretend, actually, now I want to have office 2, so that everyone thinks I want office 2, and someone wants to play me some, and then I give them office 1. That is actually the office that I want. Yeah, so that I don't tell the truth in order to get something. And I say, no, we don't want that. We want to be incentive compatible. You tell the truth what you want, and that will just improve your chances that you get what you want. The mechanism is non-bossy. That I said, when I make my choices about my office, it will not have to do with your office. Yeah? So when I get my office, then I cannot mess with yours in that sense. So I'm not the one who do these things. And it is neutral when we, can commute agents, and it would still be the same. Now these things can be incompatible, and there's something that is called randomized serial dictatorship. In the sense we have a big hat, and everyone puts in his or her name, and now we draw, and who gets the first name, and who is the first name can decide first. Yeah, so we say, okay, and we say here it's Alan, and Alan says, I want to have office 7, and then you get office 7. And then we draw the second name, and then Joseph gets it, can choose, and so on. And we get all these things there, and then that's that. That is called randomized serial dictatorship. And this is compatible. Yeah, when you are told, you tell what your choice is, there's no better way than all ever. And it's also, in that sense, Pareto efficient. You cannot do better that everyone is happy with the change. And that's the theorem of 1998. When you have a mechanism that is incentive compatible, non-bossy, and neutral, then it is already serial dictatorship. There's no other way how to do it. And so the question is, they try also in similar kind of contexts to find characterizations of this type, and are looking for that. And at times they think this characterization is correct, we should be able to prove it, or they think this is not correct, there should be a counterexample, and they try to find a counterexample to generate one, and they also fail with that, and then it is a question that is still open. And computers could help, for instance, pushing the counterexamples to higher numbers than you can do them on paper. Okay. Briefly on the matching problems with kidney donors, for instance. So although there was good news this morning that kidney donation has gone up, in general organ donations have gone up in this country quite considerably, last year. There's still a shortage, and there's also the issue that live donation is better than from dead people. And so it could be that, let's say donor 1 has a relative or friend as patient 1 and would be willing to donate 1 kidney. It can live well with 1 kidney, so it can give 1 of the 2. But donor 1 is incompatible with patient 1. For instance, they have a different blood type, or there are 2 things. One is the blood type, and there's other tissue compatibility, which is more fuzzy. It's not that yes/no as it is with the blood types. And there's also a donor 2 who has incompatible what to give to patient 2, but they would be reverse-wise compatible. So then donor 2 could give to patient 1, and donor 1 could give to patient 2. And so they can then make an agreement. By the way, that is again a legal issue with that. So it is not possible to make an agreement of the type that they say, yes, I sign a form there, I will give my kidney to your partner, you will give the kidney to my partner, and that the one operation happens first, and then the second will happen later. It happens always at the same time. So such a contract is not binding. You cannot be forced to give your kidney, even if you have signed that. If you change later your mind, then you can do that. So for that reason, these things happen at the same time. So you need then 4 operating theaters in a way where you do that at the same time. So when they're all no longer that they can change their mind, then you would when they're unconscious, then you can go ahead. But
won't you then get a problem with building longer chains and then
exactly.
2 people?
Yes, yeah, that's right. When you have more than 2 people, it gets quite complicated. You need then more and more operating theaters to do it at the same time. They don't have to be at the same place. Yeah, so you could have that whatever donor 1 and patient 2 are in one hospital, and donor 2 and patient 1 are in another hospital, and they phone and say, they are all now under anesthetics. We go ahead now. But so the problem is also when donor 1 has given away his kidney to patient 2, he has nothing to drain anymore for his. Yeah, he needs the second kidney you need, so you can't give that as well. So you have to be sure that these things were correct. Yeah, but that's right, there's a problem with that. To go for more than a 2-way exchange. You could imagine a 3-way exchange, but then also computational problems occur then. Now they have an algorithm by Roth, he got the Economics Nobel Prize last year, who gave the presentation at our symposium. He PhD student with Ross, so they worked together. So they had an algorithm for 2-way exchange. They have, I've forgotten the exact number, but it was something in the 10,000s of these kind of situations in the US, where you try to match that, and where you try to find a donor 1, patient 1 pair and match it against others. Now, an algorithm, how would you find matches there so that you match most of these pairs, so that you can do that, but you can find 2-way exchanges. But can we make correctness proof of that? That in a way, when we match these, then it has certain properties. Maybe correctness is the wrong word there, but to say that you don't lose out someone. You could do it better way. When you have, let's say, 3-way or 4, that you could say, okay, we match these 2, and then the other don't work anymore out, and then some donor receiver pair will not be available, which would be otherwise available. Is there a way to make these things formal? When these algorithms do something wrong, people may die. Not since they were not compatible, obviously we'll check that, but since you don't find a match, which is actually there. Next thing that I want to speak about is value at risk. Now, we had all about the banking crisis, and we had Niels Vosloo from the Bank of England, that has been, his department has been merged with the Bank of England, and they have reorganized the Financial Services Authority, and he spoke about that. Value at risk is something that banks have to do now, and I have to say, this becomes most fuzzy to me in a way when we look, where can our methods theorem proving also be involved. I think for these two previous areas, with auctions and also these matching problems, you have very clearly defined situations. Yeah? It's very algorithmic in a way what's going on there. So we can understand very precisely what happens, what should happen. We can specify it very clearly. And I think for that, at least in principle, it should be possible that we apply our methods there. In this area here, now things get very statistical, and it becomes very difficult to see how we can, or for me, what we can do there. And again, all that I present here about these things, I can just tell you what I understood of that, but that is not necessarily the truth of that. So as it looks, or as I understood Niels there, so banks have things like that. They look up. They look up something like that. What is, for instance, now the Unilever had yesterday evening a value of 2,792.5p. Yeah, that was at the London Stock Exchange. And now they can make a contract, and that contract has also to do with LIBOR, that is the interbank lending rate. There was this kind of scandal there that they rigged that number to a certain degree, so that they pretended that their lending rate is lower than it actually was. And let's say that that bank has a rate now of 1.02%. That's what they have to pay in interest when they lend money from another bank, and that goes in some way in that model. Why? I don't know exactly. And they said, okay, we go for 1,000 shares of Unilever, and we want to sell that on the 9th of, sorry, that I got that wrong. I think the 9th of April. I mean here now it's something like the 9th of July, 2013. Yeah, so April, May, June, July. In 3 months' time, I want to sell it. And I want to sell it to you at a price of 3,200. Yeah? So you agree to buy from me these shares, and I agree to sell these shares at a price of 3,200 p on the 9th of July this month. And we won't, no one of us knows what the actual share price then will be. So if the share price is higher than that, then I still have to sell it to you at a price of 3,200. I can buy them today at a certain risk, or I will buy them then at that time. That's what they usually do. So they, whatever, do short selling or long buying in a way. When you look at the other, so that they say, okay, at that time I will buy it, and if it is then at 3,900, I lose these 700p per these 1,000 shares. So there's a certain risk here. If it is below that price, I can easily buy it on the stock market and sell it to you, and you have to pay to me a higher price than it is worth at that moment in time. So it's also a risk for you in that. And now they have their millions of these kind of things in their books. And they all come with a certain risk, and they have to evaluate that risk. And that is what they then do at that bar model, the value at risk. And they have to sum up all the risks that they have. And then they say, if that risk is higher than our capital, then we have to reduce it. We have to do something. For instance, we had such a bet, we could sell them. If Renate and I had such a bet, and now my risk gets too high, I try then to sell it to Ursula. And Ursula says then, okay, I buy it, but you have to pay me for that. Yeah? So I have to pay her money. So I make losses, but in that sense, I make calculated losses in order to reduce my risk. And that's what they have to do. And they have to have models in order to do that. And then
they're so good at it, aren't they?
Yes, they're so good at it. And now there is this group of 8 people at the Bank of England, formerly Financial Services Authority, who have to regulate that the 18 banks of Britain, all of them, with their individually different models that they have. So they have to go to these banks and test their models and see what they do there. And there are 5,000 to 10,000 different risk factors in these models, and then they have to see yeah, that model is okay, your risk is okay, or no, it's not okay, you have to change it, you have to do something different with it. And what Niels would want to have kind of contribution there, are there some patterns that are consistent with certain deficiencies in the models or their implementations? You may have a model and you implement it, the implementation is often something completely different. These are big models, they cannot look at it all, and normally they would not look at it, sort of assume they just test it like a black box, and they do black box testing. Can we help them provide good tests? And I wasn't sure, but the only thing that came to my mind was there Ray Reiter's tests of circuits in a way, so to see which are the faulty circuits in that. But this looks like something that is very difficult. It's just a black box. Just briefly, I run out of time to say, there are certain things in our, when you use the system, for instance, currying for logicians is fantastic. It's such a very nice kind of thing, but it is not something that even mathematicians are used to. So that kind of, that you say A, arrow B, arrow C, arrow D, rather than A Cartesian product, B Cartesian product, C arrow D, which is the usual way of writing it. It makes it difficult at times to use these systems, and they wouldn't see what's going on there. Then other things, as I said, to this randomization, when you take it out as extra argument or so, this can certainly make a difference. And as lessons in general to say, I think we have a lot to offer as a community in this area. Just to give an example, we give often the example there with the Ariane disaster, when that blew up because of that programming error there in there, when they used that without proper testing, which costs something between $200 and $300 million. Or the Pentium bug, which cost Intel something between $400 and $500 million. There was something on high-frequency trading last year when they had a new algorithm. High-frequency trading is when trades happen at millisecond level. So you have all these fluctuations in the share price. I mean, we just look at the end of the day, but when you look at a millisecond level, it fluctuates there. And you can trade very, very fast there and can make a lot of money with that. Or lose a lot of money when your program is wrong. So some high-frequency trader used a program where they just did the opposite what they should do. There was a greater equal than a less than equal in something like that. And they lost in 2 hours $800 million. In 2 hours, 800. They noticed then, oops, something is wrong. But this happens at a completely different, I'm not particularly sympathetic in general to this kind of trade, but to say that when you get it wrong, it can be really big money, and I think we can offer something there, but they would normally not know that we exist, and that we have something to offer. So we can't wait that they come to us and say, can't you help us with that? So we have also to approach. But I think there are quite a number of problems. I presented some there, and now we would go to discussion in general. But can first have particular, if you have any questions of that, any type that you want to know more about things, otherwise.
So we've got some time for questions, I guess, so we started roughly 37 minutes.
Yeah,
so, any questions?
I just wonder about some human factors. So say you have some stock markets, stock traders.
Yes.
They may persuade, they may talk to each other, persuade each other to do certain things. I mean, one person may be more successful because he or she is more persuasive. And this, it seems to be outside the model. Is there any way that you could, if you were proving something about the stock market?
You mean with the VAR model? Or?
Well, I don't know.
yeah, right. There are of course these kind of things, and there are different kind of ways how to say banks. Now, I'm not quite sure whether I got what the question is, but I see, yes, there is an issue with that people, and that's why they argue also for high salaries, so that they're particularly good at doing certain things, yeah. And they take also certain risks, and these risks, when they all work out very nicely or so, it's very good for the bank. If they turn out badly, then it's of course bad for the bank. And these value at risk models are in some sense there to limit a risk that happens. There was this London whale, called the Lord Voldemort, there was who made a lot of trading of that type and had a huge loss then with kind of a couple of billions a few years back in trading, and something went wrong with their risk model, that they didn't catch that at the time. So that banks, as I said, they're not always good at that, to manage the risk at that level. But then, of course, all this kind of value at risk idea has problems of its own. The kind of situation that I said then, so I have a certain risk, my risk gets too high, I sell it to Ursula, but now it may be that Ursula has also similar kind of things, and her risk is also getting too high, so she won't buy from me, or only at an exorbitant price, and then it starts to get a downward spiral. Yeah? Everyone wants to sell their risk, and there's something like this housing crisis in the US. Suddenly you see you have all these things on books, and you thought, yes, they are fine, and it's all okay, and suddenly everyone has the same problem, and no one buys them.
And I think if you...
And then you're on a real problem, and that is something that is actually not covered by the...
just picking up on the human factors point, there's a sociologist in Edinburgh called Donald Mackenzie, and a number of people may know his book on mechanising proof. Really, the object of his study, he wrote a whole book about mechanising proof. But he's now moved on to exactly this kind of issue and how these risks occur, and the sort of human factors in that. You and I may work for the same organisation, but we may have a different understanding of the same instrument and the risks on the same instrument. But then, of course, you get onto the more subtle point of actually, is that an accident, or is it in the interests of the organisation? Is it in the interests of Goldman Sachs that they will have a group at one end of the corridor looking at this thing in one way, and a group at the other end looking at it in the other way, and then they've got all bases covered, and these groups are betting against each other. It's Google Donald Mackenzie market crashes or something. He writes very nicely about all this stuff.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of these kind of things, and it is. I think partly the idea of value at risk, that you have to say, okay, these front people, they have, of course, their own ideas what the risk is that is involved, but the bank should also, whatever the executive director on his or her desk, to look at these things every evening and say, we are still in our comfort zone with that, or it's now getting too risky and we should act. You wanted to say something else?
Well, I said it.
Yeah, but okay.
Yeah. Have you, by using automated reasoning tools, found incorrect theorems or incorrect algorithms?
Yeah, but what we had found sort of very simple hidden assumptions. Yeah, so we wouldn't say Bigquist's theorem was wrong since he didn't say that there should be at least two,
yeah.
Or that, how to say, when you speak about the maximum. There's the other way how to do it, the maximum of the empty set, in a way. So we have just one bit, and you take that one bit out, and you want to have the maximum of the remaining elements there, and take the empty set of positive real numbers or so, and what should that be? Okay, you can define it as 0. There are ways around that, so but we haven't found with these, we haven't found any incorrect theory. And we asked also Peter Kempton on that, so do you believe the theorems that are in the field, or would you assume that we find incorrect theorems? And he said that he believes the theorems, so he would say the theorems are correct. The proofs may not be correct, but the theorems are.
But some of that, but it might all, I thought the kidney example was quite a nice example, because of course, when you're applying the theorems, you're also having to discharge it. The theorem in a context, there are going to be all sorts of other assumptions and other things around it. Even if the basic theorem is correct, the theorem in that context with all the other bits and pieces may be being misapplied, or the side conditions being misused or something.
Yeah, that's right. So the context, certain hidden kind of things, that you make things explicit there, that certain things have to be clearer than clear, that before you assume it is all clear. But then to say, that was not anything that has been found by formal methods there, but where you say that you run an auction and suddenly you come into, that is something that he says is a real problem, and that for him as an auction designer, something he wants to have help with, say, I run an auction, we have designed it, we have thought about everything, we have implemented it, and now we run it, and still we are not 100% sure that we have really covered all the cases. Can't we run into a situation where we haven't specified what should be done? And obviously in an auction it should be a function, as I said. Yeah, you have this kind of initial conditions, and then it will end up with a allocation who will get it and all. But have you actually done that? And it has been a real problem in real auctions on big scale. That it was not clear than what should happen.
And so then I mean, but also some of this, you're modelling it as a dynamic process, aren't you? And I was struck with the kidney thing. Of course, you're going to have all kinds of assumptions about timing. You've got to maybe the right kidney is available, but unfortunately it's a 24-hour flight away or something. And so you've got that and similarly with the auction, it's do you get onto the more process modeling type stuff like the concurrency.
Yes, with the kidney, with all these things you make, of course, you have to simplify that. And we had yesterday the question whether physics can be modeled with formulae there. And there's, of course, then, and Joseph said, yes, with the economics, that we have the same kind of situation, and you simplify it then very much there. So you, for instance, in the kidney example, you just have the yes-no kind of, is it compatible or not? It is not that black and white. Yeah, you can say this is better compatible. Yeah, it would fit better in a way. So you have a higher chance that there will be no organ rejection than in another case. But for the simplicity of these algorithms, they had to abstract from that. It was just yes, no. So and with the auctions, you're absolutely right. There is a lot of concurrency in the this ICANN auction there. They call that a synchronous rising clock auction. So whatever, every hour, you have the chance to make a bid. When you do not make a bid, you are out. Yeah, you have to stay in the game, and then you can bid more. Let's say for the .book, yeah, you say, okay, I have now bid already 1 million. Next hour, I bid 2 million, and then 3 million, so on. It goes on, but it is concurrently. So all the bids, whether it is for .book, .app, or whatever, it happens all at the same time. And you do all your bits, and it happens all. And so how do you synchronize? You have then to also to think, where do I put my money now? Yeah, I can't put it in all these bits, so I have to prioritize. And then there are very complicated issues. We haven't looked into those at all.
Shall we probably stop this session at this time? One final point.
One final point coming to this, which I forgot to make in the presentation. That was the question: can we educate the economists to use these systems? And I feel now it's more and more difficult. I feel that I'm a bit slightly more pessimistic about it. I think it would be good enough if we can educate them in the way, yes, these systems are around. Yes, these systems should be used. Yes, we need experts for that. Now, they have no problems when you design an auction. They have no problems with that to hire a team of lawyers to specify everything. And you need lawyers in that. So the legal issues are, of course, crucial, and particularly they're very important kind of projects there. There's a lot of money involved. That you involve lawyers. That you have specialists who deal with that. Why not to have specialists who deal with automated reasoning? Final word on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the next.
Well, it's the discussion session. I thought it already started.
So we don't have any format now. It's yesterday. No. That's all right. Okay. Good.
You come here?
No, I'm not part of it. No.
So who dares to sit here?
Sure, why not?
And
I don't know anything about this subject.
Even better.
We can learn stuff.
I think I can fake it better than other people?
Yes.
Okay, just pick a couple there. You move. No? Where are you going?
I'm going to the toilet.
Okay, hurry. And you come here as well. No? It's good to have some kind of mix.
Right.
Who else? Two.
Yes, okay. 3 is fine.
Is this a fair
3 is
process? That's, I mean, is this a kind of fair, like Pareto optimal process? It's like
That's fine.
No, it's
That's
an easy
agenda
process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We need it.
People pay like nothing.
Yes. That's a good yes. Yeah, that's right.
There's a person who was interested in physics yesterday, so he may help you.
Okay.
I actually have another question to you guys, but
So, yeah, maybe you can join.
Yes. Who has worked on formalizing some domain? Why do you get these? A non-mathematical domain. Apply to some.
I didn't get
People work on building formalizations.
You hear
There's
it.
people who have worked on building formalizations. That moves me out.
Oh wow.
No, seriously, I think there's people who have done work on this thing. Who else has built form? There are a couple of hands of people who built formalizations.
So maybe we do.
Have you built a formalization?
Well, I've done system and specification.
Okay.
Anyone else comes to the rescue?
Ursula there.
No. I talk too much
Cannot
anyway.
do it. So maybe you briefly mention, well, you will give a presentation later.
I'll first to speak up about the session. So basically, I'm just saying why you basically.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. So I haven't done this before, sorry about that. So basically, why do at the moment I'm working with these systems that have lots of similarities between them. Basically, they consist of identical processes, and each process interact with each other. And what I'm trying to formalize them in temporal logic in order to prove some of the properties that may occur within a system. So what I try to use is basically try to find the similarities within the process in order to prove the properties that are involved.
So who would apply what you do?
Well, I mean, the temporal logic is quite used for system and specification and formalizing a new system. And for example, you may know about the parameterized systems or cache coherence protocols that they have. So they have this memory, and they try to share the memory within certain groups. And they try to prove some properties that, for example, two processes at the same time cannot be in a state that is conflicting. So, yeah.
Could you use it in the context of benching motions?
Well, I never thought about it, to be honest. But yeah, probably you could. For example, we could say that in matching or in auction that not two people at the same time can bet at the same time. So they have to be one has to be before or one has to be a bit after. What do you think? Yes.
Yes, this chronology is important at eBay, so to say yes, that's right. Yes. Okay.
so yeah, I only have very basic economics knowledge, but I have studied it before in a very quick summer course. My background is in theoretical physics, but I switched to mathematical logic, and now, although nominally I am a computer science PhD student, my work is actually much more logic than computer science. So specification, concurrency, I only know the names of these things. I don't know how you define them, what they're used for, what's the motivation. But one thing that has lingered on from my physics background is that I am very interested to see how logics proposed via some philosophical assumptions or some situation of reasoning, how accurately that captures, for example, human reasoning. Because AI, okay, so you can automate or compute reasonings in certain forms, and then you can study how tractable that is, which is good, but my interest is much more human reasoning, although it falls slightly outside the scope of my PhD. So in one sentence, my PhD is about defeasible reasoning. And defeasible reasoning is basically using formal logic to study situations where people can change their minds. So in deductive logic, whenever you prove something from a given set of assumptions, no matter what other assumptions you add on to your initial set, you cannot refute the conclusion, because the conclusion is already deductively valid. And this is called monotonicity. So it's actually a rule of proof as well in proof theory 101. But the feasible reasoning, you can't do that. So for example, if you make the statement, if I wait at the bus stop for 15 minutes, then the bus will arrive. But then if you say, if I wait at the bus stop for 15 minutes and there is a traffic accident in the direction of the bus, then obviously the bus probably wouldn't arrive. So we have to withdraw conclusions we make in everyday life based on new information that we learn. And that is the phenomenon called the feasible reasoning and non-monotonic logic. So logics that get rid of this rule of monotonicity tries to formalize this. And the project is motivated by AI, but also I would argue you can use this perhaps to understand under what situations do humans reason in a way that's similar to how the mathematics is describing it.
And it may change their views on what the risk, for instance, is with certain assets.
Yeah, I've not thought about this in the economics way, but there is one word that crops up in my field, which is common to economics, and that is rationality. Now, in economics, rationality is, as I understand it, just utility maximization in various contexts. But the rationality that is in my field is slightly different. I'm going to explain it in my talk this afternoon, so I wouldn't go on too much.
Sure.
But there have been attempts to try to merge the two concepts, even though historically, in the research literature, they just come from very different situations. I mean, the question is, well, why do you call them the same thing? Well, maybe that's just an answer.
So let me ask like a double-barreled question of all of you, or maybe a triple-barreled question. If you compare your formal proofs to the informal proofs that the humans are building, how much bigger are your formal proofs? And could you make your formal proofs very close to the human proofs by kind of writing macros that are, or writing inference rules that are at the level that the human uses, and formulating your proofs with those rules, and then using the formal methods to prove those rules correct?
Yes. I guess it is that these proofs are typically bigger, so 3-4 times as long. And it's not quite clear why that is the case. So it is often that the extra level of precision that you have wrappers around, and so that, for instance, when we looked at that Vickrey's theorem in a way, then the formulations are so very complicated, kind of very difficult to get a head around what is all involved in the different notions that are there to describe precisely what it is about. And when you look then at the core of it, it is just 4 cases, very simple cases in a way where you make case analysis is something bigger than the other or not. And I think to get to that point where it becomes that easy is a lot of work to be done always. And I don't know how to perhaps automate that. That's certainly one of the hopes, that we can, how to say, simplify the problem to its core. And I think once that is done, already a lot is achieved. And it should be then possible perhaps to get it as easy in a mechanized way than on paper. By the way, since it always takes much longer than when you prove it in a system, we looked first at the proofs that were given by Maskin built on the to prove that, and he had there 9 different cases. So he looked at something to say somebody has made a particular bid, and then look, is that bid the winning bid or not? So you have and then you change your bid there. Is it still the winning bid, or is it higher than the winning bid, or lower than the winning bid? So you had more cases in the proof than when you thought we don't need all these cases. Either you have won or you have lost the auction, and you change your bid, and then either you win or lose, and then we have just 4 cases to consider. And he had, I think, 9 or so. So that looked then more difficult to, when you just take the paper proof, you often want to simplify it. It is still the case, I think,
before you start proving in a formal system, you have really to understand well on an informal level what's going on. You have experience on that?
Well, to be honest, well, I try to use temporal resolution proofs, and it's what humans.
Very human.
So yeah, the machines at the moment, of course.
So how much bigger are your proofs than the human proofs?
Okay, I could probably do with 100 lines of proof what machine probably did, because it would be like 100 million or something. So yeah, it is quite what do you call it? It's quite slow. So we could interact with it, and we could give it some directions in terms of heuristics. What is the
One thing I would like to perhaps ask is, what exactly do you mean by longer or shorter? And is it also
number of steps?
Number of steps. Okay. So is this, to me, when I hear that, isn't this just something to do with the expressivity of the language? Because the human proof would be in natural language, perhaps, and then when you automate it surely would just the length of the number of your automated proof would, in some sense, depend on your logic, right? So the logic you use in which to
The human might do one step and just say A, therefore B, but if you wind that out in logic,
right.
There's 4 steps. I don't know. He's the human has done a commutative swap and a variable substitution, blah blah blah, all in one step.
So yeah, well, we do have tools for doing lots of things at one step, and the tools can, if they are kind of instructed well, they can do even more than the human. But the problem is quite a bit on the transition from the way how mathematicians express themselves to the way how it's really formally written. The human language has a lot of flexibility and ambiguity to it. So if I talk to you about what Manfred was showing, then for example, you can choose to represent the various things which he's talking about as various data structures, as various mathematical objects. And mathematicians switch between these objects very flexibly, but whenever it fits you better to talk about, I don't know, set or complex numbers, so you can understand the complex plane as a Cartesian product of real numbers. All these things mathematicians do. So it can be done by the reasoning which humans do isn't so complicated. The steps which the human does isn't so involved, but it does a lot of tricks which we haven't explained to computers. Or we don't know how to yet. Nobody knows what is natural language actually. Yeah.
The last example, and I didn't go into that there on this slide there, to say that certain things they describe there with these auctions is to say, okay, we have a certain sum of valuations times the x. The x tells you it's either 0 or 1, either you win or you lose. 0 lose, 1 win. And when you win, you have to pay your value that, and otherwise you don't pay anything or so. And that sum must be 1, right? Okay, it just means when that sum is 1, then you have exactly 1 winner in a way. So, or must be V, or yeah. So that you state in a way something that is very easy to say. Okay, we have exactly 1 winner and all the others lose. You state that, for instance, in such a mathematical description as a sum over whatever, all these players and so on. And for a system, that would be quite a hurdle to do anything with that. Go ahead.
I have a question.
Yes.
So why is it the second prize? eBay gives me the first prize.
eBay gives the second prize.
eBay gives the second price. Oh, I didn't know about it.
Yeah,
What's the argument against the first price?
The first price, when you give the first price and say, if there's something, it is £100 worth to me,
yeah.
But then it may be to the others only worth £20.
Yeah.
And I of course want only then to pay the £20. I don't want to pay 100 if no one is willing to pay that price. So I have to stay low with my bid in order to see what the others do. And so we all bid and they all speak, it's £20, I give 21, I want to be generous and so, but actually I would be willing to go to 100. But you would not want to pay that much if no one else is going to pay that much. But you can get it already for £21, let's say, if you play it low. And that is then what you should do with the first price auction.
Okay.
That's sort of the idea. And the nice thing about the second price auction that you have then this kind of, that is Vickrey's theorem that says that you can actually bid what it is worth to you. If no one else goes beyond the 20,
yeah,
you just have to pay
that was kind of my question. Like, why is Vickrey's theorem not true for the first price?
Because if you're in a bid, it's worth 100 to you.
Yeah.
You might play a game and say, I'm not going to bid 100. I'm going to try to get it for 40. Then I get a really good bargain. So I'm not going to bid the 100 because 40 might win.
Yeah.
Right? Vickrey's thing says there's no advantage to bidding anything other than what it's worth to you.
Yeah, but you probably don't understand what the Vickrey's theorem is saying that if I'm putting in my true bid, then with the second price, that this is weakly dominating or whatever was the word.
Yeah. I can't do better than giving my true value to it. With the first price auction, you can do better. Since it depends. And Vickrey says, I can't do better indiscriminately what the others do. Whatever the others kind of strategy they follow, what they did, what they do, you personally cannot do better just on your own and you don't have to consider what the others do. With the first price bid, you have to consider what the others do. If the others have no interest in it or so, then you better don't bid much. If the others have a lot of interest to it, then you would go up to 100. What it is actually worth. So you have to play games in that. That was also the kind of thing that with the matching kind of thing that in this kind of where you can tell the truth. And Vickrey's auction is an auction that is designed in a way where you can tell the truth about it, but it is worth.
It just happens to me that I replace myself with two identities. That if I just make two eBay accounts for myself, that the second price auction gives me the first price auction. So that's what kind of bugging me.
That's a nice approach.
In practice, I think one often doesn't know what something is worth at one. For example, if I'm going to go out and bid for a house, well, maybe it's worth 150,000 to me, or 160. Don't think I would have. Well, maybe if I sell some shares or something, I could afford it. Because one can't predict what the future is going to be, what future price rises are going to be, relative prices. So the maths, of course, then becomes much more complicated. My question is this sort of fuzziness and uncertainty being taken into account in more advanced versions of these theorems? And does automated reasoning play a role in helping prove these much more complicated results, which I think
automated theorem proving does not play any role yet in auction design. That's what we try to do. We try to get into that, and we have at this moment in time just proven Vickrey's theorem, and that's that.
Straightforward.
That is all that there is. This straightforward, very simple version. But we are in touch with Peter Kempton, and he tells us what would be of interest to him, and we try to model that. But with that, we have no way that we could go in this direction, what you just said. And I think they do, and they don't have theorems about that. So I mentioned Paul Klemperer, who designs auction in this country, also for the government with the G3 mobile phone license auctions there. But I think there is still a lot of black art in that. So they do not have mathematical theorems in a sense to say when we design it this way, we will get so much when we did that. £400 pounds per head, and otherwise we get only 20. But that's what he does and what he can do, and I think there's a lot what you say exactly there, this kind of situation, oh, right, I should bid more. Now they have bid already so much, and it is probably worth more, so that you wouldn't just put there in a second price auction, you have whatever, some rising block auction, where then everyone sees what has been bid, and then Vodafone says, no, we can't stay back when Orange has already bid so much, and so they would then go up and bid more. But I don't think that there are any theorems there yet.
The way you buy houses in Scotland is different from the way you buy them in England, and it's exactly this system where you just send in a bid, but there, of course, it's the highest bid that gets it, not me. And there's a whole legal protocol for how these things work.
I have a question. Can I ask it here, or do I have to go back? Economics as a discipline is quite notorious for not having the predictive power of, say, physics or chemistry, the exact sciences. And now you're saying that automated theorem proving can play an important role in checking, say, the correctness of certain assumptions or theorems. I was wondering whether, or perhaps there's an expert in this room, whether one can apply the procedures in automated theorem proving to, say, reverse mathematics, and then for a given theorem in economics, identify the necessary axioms in order to prove theorems. That's what reverse mathematics does. And then automate this process. And then once you've identified these axioms, or which are motivated by certain assumptions, say about rationality of your agents, can you actually test this with empirical data of how agents previously have behaved, or how the stock market, which is it's not Brownian motion, it's geometric Brownian motion, for example. Okay, so has this been considered, or will this be possible?
Now, firstly, I think that there are two different issues.
Okay.
I think the first to say, when we look at application area economics, and I think these first two areas with, let's say, auction design and matching, where you have some mathematical theorems on certain aspects of it, not on all aspects. The other to say that you say that this auction is bringing more money for me than the other auction. That is typically not what you would characterize mathematically yet. So I think there's in general not enough knowledge there that cannot be applied. And the second part, we'll speak of the whatever macroeconomics, the economics as a whole, to see what is actually the risk of these assets for a bank or so, which has a lot to do with statistics and these things. I don't think that we can do that we are there anywhere close. I think also economics as a field is not really good at that. So otherwise you could not have sort of opinion on that. One say, yes, it is this, or the other say, yeah, it is that. Yes, we should do quantitative easing, no, we should not. So whatever the government proposes, you will find economists who say, yes, this is a good move, and others who say this is a bad move. And you see that shows in some sense that there is a gap to whatever science and physics.
Sure.
When it was a physical theorem, when we said, should we go for nuclear power, yes or no, then I think physicists could also have opposing opinion on that. It would not be that cool. But in other areas, we had looked into that, and we wanted to look into that with pillage games, for instance, to study that in a way to look into certain aspects where they are applied, and to see whether the, how to say, preconditions of the theory match, find weakest conditions under which a theorem can be proved. So, but I don't think that much work has been done yet.
But it's a possibility.
Yeah, but I would always think we often have to look at very narrow kind of situations. So the more broader, the more wider your models get, or what you want to describe with it, the more difficult it gets, and the less chances you have to prove hard theory. By the way, there was also kind of where there are, when we said we give certain community service, we want to collect also theorems, whatever, as REDAC does with 100 theorems, to collect also 100 theorems in economics, and that. Actually, there are not that many more theorems around in the whole field. in economics. That the field is to a large degree not that much of theorems, but you have more that you have particular mechanisms that you build up, like whatever, a particular auction, and then you prove on that mechanism certain properties. That is more what you have there than that we have.
I have learned to study it for 3 years. I'm actually a bachelor of economics, and both in microeconomics and in macroeconomics. You for example, get game theory. You get a lot of optimization. It's mathematics. So I would say that you say that these people they don't know what to do. That's true, but that's because they don't know in which model we are. Like the models are mathematical and they are really well. It's like physics. It's calculus. It's functional analysis. It's all of that. But it's useless if the models are unfaithful, if you do not know what the assumptions are. So that probably plugs into your questions, like what are really the assumptions in which we are? What's the real world? So I don't know. It seems to me that you can do a lot of theorem proving for economics, but it will be really mathematics what you will be.
Yeah, for an ideal case where the maths is nice, but does it correspond to how humans behave? That's a different issue.
Yeah. Now, for example, game theory, I think a lot of things for game theory could be nicely motivated by economics, like equilibria, etc., etc. That's not totally disconnected from reality. I think you can do a lot.
You can do a lot. Just to say on that, as kind of, I guess we have to move with it with the time. Just to say as a final word, I think there is a lot that we can do, that we can offer, and we try in our project, this small project, in a way to how to say, build trust there in that community, to get some interest that they look what we do. And I would like to invite everyone here in this room also, if you had to contribute something, if you want to, please get in touch with us. We have also problems which we would like have help with, theorems in the sense that we would prove and which others there in the economics area would find interesting. And when we can do that, I think we have a big chance there to do something. Okay, thank you very much.
Well, but I think it's quite related anyway. And I wouldn't really say there's such a big difference as it may seem, since this seems to be more economy of higher level. So not center or maximize one individual to some.
No, I don't check my
Are you any of these guys?
So, what happened last night?
Okay.